Hi, and welcome to another episode of Digital Detox Secrets. So this is kind of like a 2-in-1 hour. I have Joe Fier here. We just recorded Social PR Secrets. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Lisa. Welcome. Or I'm back.
And we're kind of switching gears to talk about Digital Detox Secrets, which is the book, the podcast, and kind of takes a dive into this digital world and work-life balance. And, right now, whenever, depending on when people are listening to this, we are in kind of still a pandemic. We don't know if the
hmm
doors are going to be open or shut. And Joe, you host a podcast called Hustle and Flowchart.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that podcast.
Yeah. That podcast is our baby. Like, we love this thing. As part of our business, it's the best. So we talk with the most interesting people in our network, which we have a very vast network. And thanks to you, we've been introduced to some even more amazing people. So we just extract these amazing thoughts and patterns and processes that these entrepreneurs, mainly an entrepreneur-based show, but I would say anybody kind of has an interest in certain episodes. But we get it's long form, and we just kind of get the best in these interesting, deep rooted stories out that are just fun to listen to. And we just make it a big part of our business. So that's the podcast. It's I think a lot of folks get stuff from it there.
Every once in a while, you have someone on your show that they're talking about their journey, or, you also have some health and wellness entrepreneurs. And one of the topics that's come up and, that I hear every once in a while, and it's just about how, and I realized this when I started going to my mastermind, Baby Bathwater. I thought I was alone. I thought I was the only one that had anxiety, but entrepreneurs actually suffer more than we think from anxiety, depression, and, bipolar types of symptoms they're not bipolar. It's just like being an entrepreneur is harder than people think.
It's kind of manicky, on off really quick, can't really control the loops in your head sometimes. Yeah. I live it still. And I know, I'm sure, I don't think it ever goes away, but we kind of learn how to battle it or keep it at bay, I guess, with certain mechanisms and practices. But we can chat all about that all day long.
Yeah. So I was actually listening to Cameron Harold. He was talking to the Baby Bathwater group, and he listed like the 8 signs of bipolar. But when he was listing them, he was like, okay, does anybody feel like this? Does anybody feel like that? And like everybody raised their hand for each one of them. And he's like, okay, I just listed the 8 signs of being bipolar, but like, obviously you're not all bipolar. It's just one of those, I guess it's just what the makeup of entrepreneurs. They live in a very stressful world, and kind of it comes out on your interviews that you're talking to different entrepreneurs. And also he talked about just, and I covered this in my book, Digital Detox Secrets, entrepreneurs and suicide, and how you just, we can list X amount of entrepreneurs that have committed suicide, and you're like, what? That person was so successful. But like, little do you know what goes on behind, behind someone's head, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, look at the Bourdain, for instance. He's the first one that comes to mind. It's like Anthony Bourdain. Here's a guy that's traveling the world, and he gets to go everywhere, and he's probably not paying for anything, and he's getting paid well, and he's at the top of his game, and then suicide. Yeah, and we'll never know exactly what was going on, even if notes are left or whatever, but and with a personal story of suicide not myself, obviously, but my dad last year took his own life right before I had my first baby, which was a horrible timing, but obviously it's never a good timing. But he wasn't an entrepreneur, but definitely, I mean, we're all human. So I saw a lot of what kind of, in his later years, how that transitioned from his norm. Like his routines were different, location was different, communication was different, but that can all be applied to an entrepreneur as well. And sometimes it's even heightened because those types of things, the things that are really rooted in depression and suicide, entrepreneurs are really good at having masks on, and talking to a lot of folks and being bubbly, bubbly, bubbly. And then when the camera goes off, or the lights go down, they're kind of alone feeling, even if they do have a family around, because they maybe they're not expressing themselves, or they're not communicating properly with, their loved ones. asking for help because entrepreneurs feel like they can just do it all themselves. And I know that I fall into that trap often, but that's probably the biggest one I've been working out of. And yeah, it's just like that kind of loneliness factor, I feel
Yeah.
like, is a big piece with entrepreneurs.
And I think also with entrepreneurs, like you said, they're extroverts, but then they're also introverts. Like I
Mm,
really like being alone. Like I love like going back to my hotel room when I'm at conferences and just shutting the
yeah.
door, and like maybe I don't have to like do anything the next day, but there's like 10 events happening that if you don't go to, then it's like, what if you don't go? And it's just kind of like layer on top of layer, which, like you said, you don't have to be an entrepreneur to feel those layers. And I feel like, right now with what the world is going through, what businesses are going through, what teachers are going through, what students are going through, what everybody's really going through in a different way. It is a recipe for depression, for
Oh yeah.
disaster. And, I actually, firsthand, my daughter is suffering, and I got
Hmm.
a an education on the definition of depression, and like there's a difference between being depressed and being sad. And being depressed for, it could be temporary, situational, but if you
Hmm.
don't get it treated, it just turns into this vicious cycle
Yeah.
of suffering from long-term depression is hard to reverse, and you need to seriously take action. And but if
Yeah.
somebody's never diagnosed with it, how do you even know?
That's tough. Yeah. And that's because I've been thinking since my dad passed away, I've been, yeah, I look at all the good and then I looked at the bad qualities, of course, and it's just kind of doing this audit of his life. And unfortunately, there was no note, no nothing, like nothing. So it's like, hold on, what just happened? So it's kind of this onion that's been unlayering itself since last October. And like I see these patterns now. Like for him, he was a runner every single day. He would go run like 6 to 10 miles a day when he was like, which wasn't that long ago. So I mean, like he died, I think at 66 he was, and the guy was like freaking active. But then the last few years of his life, or a couple years, stopped running and he stopped going outside as much. The guy loved going outside. He stopped communicating as much, and he had different relationships. He was with a girlfriend that's like kind of stifled a lot of him, really. And I feel like that, like I've taken to my life, and for one, like it's very easy to get stifled in our work. Yeah, I know I've done that when you're like, oh, I can go, I can do this thing. Even on the weekend, I'm always thinking of it. And even recently I had this kind of aha. I think I said it on your other show actually, is you have this open loop. It's like if you have this open loop, you're not truly alive. Like you're not present. You're thinking of some future thing, or even maybe in the past. So like, either anxiety or depression. It's one of those two. Well, they typically say depression's in the past and anxiety's in the future. With
Well, I also got an education on anxiety, and I can't remember what they call this part of anxiety, but it's like thought, feeling, behavior. And it's this vicious
mm-hmm,
cycle that you have a thought, but the thought is typically not a fact when it comes to
mm-hmm,
anxiety. Like, so like if you could just think of like, I used to be afraid of flying, and
mm-hmm.
like being afraid of flying, like when I get on a plane, like there's no, like, I can't say it's a fact that the plane is going to crash. So
All
it's
right.
bringing that onto yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
then that thought creates the feeling of being scared and anxious, and then a behavior. And it's just like this like vicious cycle that
Mm-hmm.
then anxiety and depression together, just it's
Oof.
scary.
Yeah, and there's like these mechanisms. I'm starting to see them show up in myself because I'm like, okay, well, if my dad was that, like I didn't see something like this coming. And I'm like, he has a lot of similar personality traits as me. Not all of them, obviously. I'm shared with my mom and other environment and stuff, but I'm like, okay, so just. And this literally happened just last 2 weekends. Even this weekend was one of them. It was like I almost start freaking out a little bit if I'm not doing anything. It's weird to say that, but it's like I literally have nothing to do. Work is fine, life is fine, like family's fine, but for some reason I'm freaking out mentally. Like I'm getting a little short. I could feel it, and I noticed recently is, oh, I need to move my body. I need to go do something physical, raise my blood pressure. Like everything needs to go. And it wasn't literally just recently. I've started running just like 3 miles here and there because I used to run all the time. That was my passion. until it started hurting in my knees and stuff. So, but like I'll just go around the block now, or just like go down the street. I have a lot of hills around here, so it doesn't take much to get going, and I feel better. I think it's like, even if it's 5 minutes, I'm like, holy crap, I could think clearer again. Like that. That's how I thought of that whole thing. Like, oh, close the loop and just become alive. Like literally, it's like everything else. Now I can actually see, the fruit on the trees that I'm running by. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Look at all these oranges or something. Yeah, and like, whereas before I'm like, I gotta do this thing, and all like kind of anxious and tight feeling, and like, that's
Yeah,
not.
and it's amazing how much more productive you are from doing
Mm,
it, and how clearer and freer you feel. It's like a natural drug, is to
it is.
move your body, and whether it's yoga or
Uh-huh.
go running or something. And it's actually, I mean, just it's a proven fact, like how that will help
Oh,
you so much versus turning to something like self-medicating with a glass of wine, or
sure.
smoking pot or something, which is fun every once in a while socially, but like when
Right.
you're doing it to like
To
you're
feel better. Yeah.
yeah, to like,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a band-aid. Yeah. It's
yeah,
not good. Yeah.
yeah. And it's hard now, we're stuck at home a lot, and there's more free time. So what are some of the things that you do just to kind of, besides running, to keep your
Hmm.
your mind kind of on the right path, or
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I'm always kind of experimenting with. So breathing is a huge piece for me. Either, I'll choose to either, I always like to breathe in the morning. Yeah, and I say breathing, it's like typically like a Wim Hof kind of practice. Very, aggressive inhales, and then the exhale that goes, and you can do like a sped up approach where you do like a 30-second increment, a minute, 30, a minute and a half, two, or straight up Wim Hof style. And anyone can look that up and see what that's all about. That almost feels like a drug too, because after I'm done with that, my head's just like, I'm just,
yeah. I don't
it's
think I've ever
cool.
done that before, but it sounds similar to it. Have you ever done Kundalini yoga?
It's similar to that. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Cause
tried
I,
that once, and or I've tried it a bunch of times, but when you walk out of even 20 minutes of Kundalini, you
mm,
feel high as a kite. You feel like
mm-hmm.
the world is just like amazing, and like you just
Uh-huh.
walked into this like wonderland. And like
Yeah.
you can walk in, before you walked into when I went to that class, I was having the worst day ever, and I just forced
Wow.
myself to go. And I walked out, I was like, life is good.
It's crazy. Huh? I mean, like, cause that's, yeah.
It's the
And most of
breathing. It's that
it really,
breathing.
it's breathing. And I know there's some movement in the yoga, obviously. Yeah. And Kundalini, I think there's still doing,
It's
is that
some
a lot of, it's more breathing than
It's
anything
more
though,
like
right?
really like intense breath work, and
Yeah.
some people are like, oh, that sounds really boring. Like, I don't want to just sit
No,
there and breathe, but it's really
breath is the
invigorating.
best.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, I've done some crazy breath work, and, like ice baths. I've done that whole thing, which is a lot of Wim Hof. I've done it with shamans, with some interesting plant medicines in me, and like doing that for an extended period for like 4 hours of crazy breathing with like, all this other stuff that's just like heightens everything. But at the end of the day, you don't need all that. You can just literally just sit on a rock, like I'll do sometimes in my yard here. And it's kind of cool. It's like a Native American, like old sacred area. So there's like a little grinding stone. So I'm like, cool. I just plop myself on that rock right next to where I'm like, cool. Some cool history has gone down here. I don't know what, but I'm going to breathe and feel tapped in. And I'll do that in the morning. I'll try to do that daily in the morning, just kind of before things get too active and too hot out here. And it sets me up for the day. Yeah. So breathing's huge.
Okay.
And
So one of the things on your bio, when we were talking
uh,
about this on Social Peer Secrets, was that you talk about that about taking a digital detox to Hawaii. So
mm-hmm.
I guess you can't go to Hawaii right now, but so is
I
Hawaii.
have one scheduled later this year though in November. I'm praying that I might
Uh,
extend the trip, just so if we have to quarantine, we'll just say screw it. I'm here for a month. I'm
so
gonna
how
do it anyway.
how is that a digital detox for you? What do you do when you
Well,
go to Hawaii?
so that one, I'm really good at like just putting away my devices and not looking at them. If I'm with my family, I have absolutely no problem just setting my phone in like a closet, or not closet, but like in a drawer somewhere, and just leaving it. And so I think I know that's what I do when I go on trips in general in Hawaii. That's just like my happy place. I love Maui, and kind of going off into these far off areas and kind of just forgetting about everything. And I forget exactly what I wrote there, to be very honest, but
No, it was just
what,
that, your favorite digital detox is going to Hawaii or
mm,
hiking or, going on,
yeah.
just getting away and going into nature.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, my big thing is I want to, and I haven't done this yet, but I've done this more for an extent, short periods, is have a screen free, a digital free trip. Start with a week, maybe go a little further, but there's just so many, like we were talking about before, all these notifications and things that always keep us on. And it's like, well, do we really need to be on all the time or respond to that message immediately? It's like, no, got my life to live. I want to make sure I'm paying attention to my family and my dogs. And so like I kind of live that in my house a little bit. Like once work is done, I really do really well of just like shutting it off, close the door and walk away. And so Hawaii is kind of like I guess a heightened version of that where it really takes me out of my element big time.
So many people have a really hard time shutting it off and putting the phone away at all, like at
Yeah.
all. So what advice do you give to people like that? I mean, I know probably 99% of the people I know cannot do that. They just can't.
Yeah. I know, and I'm not like perfect in terms like I still will do a quick check in here and there, but it's not like much. And
Yeah.
um, I feel like I've always been really good at compartmentalizing things, and recently more so with the business. So like having structure to my days enough. There's a newer friend of mine named George Bryant, calls them containers. So it's like having containers with your time. So a container of exactly what you want to get done with work or a project at home, like allot yourself that container, but like be true to it. So focus on that. If it's work container and if it involves a phone or all this other stuff, that's cool. But just don't let it bleed over to the rest of your day. So I've always kind of done that in weird ways, like emotionally, like even with my dad passing, like I was able to kind of compartmentalize in certain scenarios where it won't bleed over so much into like something else I'm trying to focus on or a big presentation or something. But then, so I don't know, that's like not really like it's not something I actively do all the
I
time.
think
Sometimes.
that the word you use, compartmentalize, is a word that a lot of people, it could work to their advantage or disadvantage. But I think
True.
for the
Yeah.
most part, like if you can compartmentalize the way that you're describing it, that it's healthy and
Mm-hmm.
you aren't, basically you're not pretending like something didn't happen and never coming back to it, because that type of compartmentalizing would be, it's just
Ignoring.
putting stuff under the
Yeah.
carpet type of
Yeah.
thing, compartmentalizing. But you do have to be able to, wake up and see your daughter and, not be in bed with the covers over your head, not wanting to come out, which is like, that, you want to do, when something bad happens, like that's the first go-to, at least for me.
Yeah.
I want to get a
Yeah.
weighted blanket on top of me and just nobody bother
It's the
me.
best. Yeah, blackout shades and go where. I had to stop using my weighted blanket because I wanted to stay in bed all day. I'm like,
Right?
this thing is too good.
I've been asking for a weighted blanket for my birthday for like a month. So do you have a brand that you like? Do you have?
Who? Brand? No, it was some on Amazon, but I think I have
All
a
right.
15 pounder. So
Okay. 15
15 is
pounder.
good.
Okay. That's the one I actually found one on Amazon.
Yeah, I would
Um,
say most are good, but the poundage is what you really got to ask.
what does a day in the life of Joe look like?
Oh, that's
Is
scary.
there?
No, I'm just kidding. I would say it starts off with me family time, ideally in the morning before work time. So I'm not, again, compartmentalizing all that stuff. Is work stuff waits until typically 9 to 10 o'clock is when I get started. But before that, ideally, like I did today, is work out. Go on a walk with the family. Today I did both somehow. We made it work. And that's kind of my morning, and just coffee. I'm always doing bulletproof coffee in the morning. So that kind of jacks up my brain, gets the fat going. I don't really eat anything until like later in the day.
Are you guys?
But
You talked about? Are you still doing intermittent fasting? I remember you guys talked about that on the
kind
show.
of, I guess I do it without like totally, I'm not strict on myself. So again, I'm not like going to be hard nosed about this stuff, but like I ate today around like 12:30, which is earlier than I normally would. I'd probably wait till 2ish, kind of like right now. Typically that butter coffee that I have in the morning holds me over really well. So I'll do things like that. I always have this iodine droppers from a guy that was on our podcast. You haven't? Yeah. I got my wife on that now. I do 15 drops a day in the morning.
I really feel like that's why I have not gotten sick since
Really?
like
Yeah.
March.
And I haven't either.
Nothing, like not even a little bit. So we
That's
have
so
to like
cool.
make sure we talk about Theo's, what is it called?
Theo Lucier. That's Mother Earth Labs or something like that. I think
Put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's good. And so I do that every morning, vitamin D, of course, all that stuff. I kind of do his stack that he talked about on our show. But in the work day, I'm kind of working, like I said, around 10 to sometimes it's earlier. I'm shooting for more like 4:00 as like an ending point, but nothing's to say I might have a podcast at 4 or even 4:30 or 5, but I'm taking like the gaps in the day to go outside, go on a walk, if it's not blazing hot like it is right now. And I like to just get some outside time. I got to get that sun or I start to freak out, kind of like I was saying earlier. And I mean, that's kind of and then the evening, I can't just like watch TV or even like an interesting show. It kind of like, I could watch one maybe, and then just kind of, I just got to get into doing something more productive. So like reading or just hanging out with the family. I don't know. Not one to just sit around.
Yeah. One thing I hear that you guys talk about, and I just think somebody listening to a podcast or just maybe listening to a podcast, they must be like, oh, this is, it is fun interacting and interviewing people and just doing what we're doing right now, but it is exhausting. It's not as easy as, you get off and from the interview, whether you're hosting or guesting, it's almost like going to a conference and just speaking for an hour, which is very hard because you're 100% focused. So what is it like? Do you do anything special to prepare, or do you do anything special after?
That's a huge one, because our podcast days, we used to record 4 in a row, and that was brutal, because when we were done with the third one, we started feeling this kind of almost like a hangover effect, like a day after drinking, like this weird dull headache, very lethargic, eyes were burning, kind of just from looking. Probably doesn't help looking at a screen all the time. That's why I had glasses on earlier.
It's probably also like people can relate a little bit from being on Zoom calls all day now.
Yes.
It's like the Zoom hangover, right?
It is. And I think the biggest piece is what you just said. You have to be on. Well, it doesn't, don't have to be on. You choose to be on because you want to do a great interview. But it's just like doing a speech. Anytime where, because I think literally, I don't know if it was Theo that said this or Dave Asprey when we had him on, but like your brain swells when you have to concentrate or when you're using that much energy. So of course you're going to have a headache because your brain's literally swelling up, and if you're always on, you gotta rest that brain. So we do 3 a day now is our max. So we actually chopped off the 4th because we're like, you know what, we're literally hurting ourselves, and it's not worth it for the listener, because we want to put a good product out there. So
definitely. So that's a tip for somebody that's trying to start a podcast. If you're trying to do like more than 2 or 3 interviews a day, even when I do 2, I learned from you guys. I interview twice a week, and try not to have any other types of client meetings or anything that's gonna like cause me any serious brain use, because I just want to be as fresh as possible. Last week wasn't one of those weeks. I had all kinds of stuff happening back to back, and then I all of a sudden had to do an interview for an hour, and then an interview at the end of the day, and I was just like,
I've done that before. I think last week I had some of that too happen. I was like, oh, dang it.
And you're just kind of like seeing things like notifications that you didn't want to see like come across, and you're just like, oh, hi. I'm
I feel like the biggest thing is switching costs for sure. Like I'm constantly thinking now, because I'm actively trimming so much from my day to day and just saying no more. Erin, who you introduced me to at MindFix, that was the thing that I did. I keep giving her shout outs everywhere because she legitimately changed how my brain works. I feel like
share some of the tips that she gave you that are working.
You don't mind. No, it's perfect. And she asked if I could, because I'm glad to. So we had her on our podcast, and she basically described the whole patterns thing. I think she's been on your show, right?
Yeah.
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 So yeah, she described all that stuff and then basically said, hey, I'll just work with you. And like, I really want to help you. And mine was the overcommitting pattern. And well, at first I thought it was procrastination and all this stuff. She was like, yeah, it's overcommitting. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And Matt would say like, yes, that's right. So she she had me do a list on Google Docs of everything I'm saying no to for a week. And I think within a week, I had like 20 or 30 things I put on there. And some were some pretty big things too, like saying no to big people that even she was like, holy crap, how the heck are you? Like her comments were amazing. They were just like, holy shit, how are you doing all this in one session? And, in this short period of time. And then we had a couple follow-ups. And I think after that, it was like, okay, change does not have to be long or difficult or complicated, like changing for the better or just eliminating something. Cause I had this kind of thing where it's like, oh, you got to do more for more. But it's like, no, you could subtract and get more. So, like work
sense.
less and make more kind of
Right,
thing, or do
right.
more. So that was my big thing. And since doing that, I'm like, it's kind of just locked in now. I'm like, okay, well, here's another opportunity. Now's my game to turn on and like, well, what do I do with this? 80% of these are going to be a no. Does this one, come through the filter? And most of them are not. So I'm like having a fun time saying no to podcast interviews or saying, hey, follow up in like 3 months.
Yeah.
So I put it back on them.
Yeah.
And it's never in a jerk way. It's like, and it's hard for me to say no because I'm kind of a people pleaser. So it's like, so
and
Aaron just got me out of that.
So much. You like interacting.
Yeah.
And it's fun for you while you're doing it, but then you just don't realize like how exhausted you are after doing it because you said yes so much. Right.
And the switching cost. Yeah. It's the exhaustion. It's like and like you said, oh, I'm on a call or I got to answer, or I got a deadline, but it's like, oh crap, now I got to do this interview. Oh, I got to go back. And it's like this switching, that time is like probably a 30 minutes of your brain kind of in mush mode.
Yeah.
And it's like, like not effective.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. You also talk a little bit about flow state. How do you get to your flow state?
I think it's a lot of what so I get in flow chatting with people like you. Yeah. Because as someone who shares great thoughts, help me to get into a flow state or starts to connect stuff for me. But then getting to real flow state, I got to like get outside or do something away from the screen. So that's
do a lot of writing. Do you do a lot of writing?
Journaling at night is I'm pretty consistent with. I'm not going to say I'm daily, but that's where I'll connect a lot of dots. And it'll start with like a Rich Sheffer, and a buddy of ours is like, he calls it a sentence stems. So you kind of start off with this idea of like, okay, I'm trying to solve this problem. What if here's what I would do, and you almost kind of just like list a bunch of brainstorming of how to solve this thing that you're working through, or this issue, this frustration, whatever it might be.
That's really cool.
And then it's almost like, and that will unlock. Some will be like really like kind of like, oh well, that's obvious, or blah blah blah. And then you're like writing like, whoa, where did that one come from? And then it connects the dots. And I feel like it's those things that connect the dots in your subconscious or wherever those are hiding out will allow you to get more into the flow state and kind of just realize, oh, most of the other stuff I was doing is probably not worth it. And so yeah, I'll do that and definitely mix in, like I said, the working out, the going outside. I got to do that. Just somewhere away from being cooped up inside. I'm not good in a box all day long. That's not what I'm made for.
Yeah, me neither.
CBD helps too, by the way. Yes, and that is a shameless plug for Ojai.
Well, let's just both plug Ojai Energetics because literally that's how I live is,
really?
I take baths with it. I take it like just as needed during the day. It definitely optimizes my mode, whatever it is. It either helps me feel less anxious or, helps me sleep better at night. And when I don't have it, it's kind of annoying that I don't have it. Like if I go out of town and forget it, it's like,
oh yeah. I know. I was actually just looking at it. I'm like, I gotta go get some more. That, and I realized my peppermint, because I did the whole trick that you told me about.
Oh, you
smell
did?
Peppermint, and I did that right before our interviews here.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually one of my tricks that I do too, like right before
Mm-hmm.
conferences, or I'll do something like that, or listen to, just there's like a 5-minute meditation on Buddhify that's called Ready.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's for like if you're about to like be in a competition or do an interview or give a
Uh-huh.
speech, and it's a guided meditation, and that really help you. I haven't done it in a while because it's more for like when you're speaking at a conference and you just have to kind of get in that flow state. So
Yeah.
I would do that.
Ooh.
But yeah, Buddhify is one of my favorite apps.
Apps.
Yeah,
Okay. I just wrote it
meditation.
down. I've
Yeah,
never heard of that one. It's a cool
yeah.
name.
Yeah, definitely. What are some of your favorite tips that you've heard from your guests just about, just digital detox in general, or health and wellness, that you're just like, Theo's one of them, and
Mm-hmm.
what else? You guys, now you're just
Oh,
part of your
let's see.
lifestyle.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's like now they're like mashing together so much because we just, all these little nuggets are just are amazing. Um, let's see here. There was one that for some reason Dave Asprey is popping up in mind. Yeah, I said something like, "Oh, our time is our greatest resource," and he was like, "Actually, energy is." And I was like, "Interesting." And so he's like, "Well, yeah, like so is the time that you like say you choose to drink a lot the night before, and it's like, how's that time in the morning when you wake up at 7 o'clock or so? How's
Yeah,
that time feeling for you? Is that really worth it?" Or is it like the energy that's associated, like what you're putting out there? It's like if you had I'm totally butchering this, but the whole thing it was kind of like a reframe of like, okay, well, here's the commonly thing is a time is what the precious resource. It's like actually it's the energy that we put into things, like the quality of energy
yeah,
that actually is put in. You can put in all the time in the world, but is that really what's going to give you the result you want? So
yeah.
that
That's so true.
interesting reframe there.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, so we had Will on from Ojai. He was amazing, and I thought that just kind of opened up our minds to these plants out there that can help us. Theo has been great on the podcast. He's a biohacker, so he talked about things all the way down from desiccated. Is that how you say it? Liver, basically dried liver. It's like how those are some of the best, vitamins and minerals out there, and I hope that's true. Taking some of those now, but little things, I don't know, little things like that, little like I
yeah,
mentioned, George Bryant containers on your day. I mean,
yeah.
these like time blocking, if that works for some people, has been an effective tool for people on our show.
Yeah. Well, we'll put those in. I'll put them in the links in
Cool.
the interview notes. And if you think of any more, you can just email me and let me
Yeah,
know.
there's a
But
lot. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, digital detox secrets, we could go on forever. And I really, appreciate you sharing your story about your dad. And if you have
Yeah.
any other tips for, anyone listening on like how to, you know, deal with something like that and
Hmm.
overcome it and identify, like, I would love, if there's any last bits of wisdom that you have.
Yeah. No, it's if there's any interesting patterns popping up that maybe don't feel right in you or in someone else you love or know, talk to them or talk your feelings out. And if it has to be just to yourself, that's okay. You don't have to be like, go talk to you can write it down, use journaling. Like journaling has been amazing for me to unlock these weird patterns that I'm like, what the hell is this thing? Or like, you're frustrated in this thing, write it out. It's like just the act of unloading your brain can do so much. And so I'd say that breathing is huge. And this is actually something I was telling my dad not long before he passed away, is this exercise that John Assaraf actually talked about on the podcast. Now, this is pulling up things. It was this breathing technique. I forget exactly what John said, but basically it's focusing on your in breath on the new and then breathing out the, kind of the stuff that doesn't serve you, and being very intentional with that breath and then that out breath of just exhale the garbage that doesn't serve, the weird patterns and stuff like that. And I like more the aggressive breathing, but oh my God, those things have been like game changers whenever I'm in a funk. And like I said, running, any pattern that you find yourself like in your happy place, like write it down and like tattoo it to your arm or something, because like it's crazy the times where I'll find myself in this weird pattern, and then it's not until like maybe later that evening after I've totally like banged my head against the wall figuratively, um, be like, why didn't I just run? Why didn't I just go on that bike in my garage that's literally right there for like 2 minutes, and I would have got out of that funk.
Yeah.
So,
It's weird how when you're in a funk, like you know what you're supposed to do, but you
uh
just
huh,
literally don't do it. I mean,
it's true. Yeah,
I'm
it's
definitely
crazy.
guilty of it all the time. Like I'm like, okay, I just need to go to yoga right now and I will be so much better right when I get out. But like
Mm.
some days I just don't go, and it's just
Or you can even just do some. I'm sure you know enough of the sequences that you just go in your house somewhere, in your backyard or whatever, and then probably bust a couple of those out, and you're
yeah,
probably feeling
yeah.
50% of the way there at least.
You're
you
right.
know.
Yeah, it's crazy. One thing I just learned also about suicide is that just in general, just kind of like protecting your mind from having
Mm-hmm.
those thoughts is
Yeah.
to not watch things that are super super stressful, like where like just for example a movie where maybe somebody
Mm.
commits suicide or something super intense like I mean I think do you watch Ozarks?
I have. I haven't kept up with it, but it's
Yeah.
creepy. I
But
know
like
that.
watching just like super intense
Yeah.
anxiety ridden where people are either, killing themselves or killing other people is
Mm-hmm.
just like super unhealthy to do if especially if you're suffering, if you're, already have anxiety or depression or you're feeling bad just because of something. If you're feeling
Uh-huh.
sad temporarily, like the worst thing you can do is watch something like that. That's like
It's
a
true.
fact. And
And
I
it's kind of
never really
addicting in a way, like because you're
yeah,
like, oh look, I'm not. But it's like, no, no, it's bad. No,
yeah.
not good timing.
Yeah, watch
Yeah.
something like Mr. Rogers or something that you're gonna feel good,
Yeah.
make you
It's so
smile.
tough.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, stay away from the news, probably. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
probably not going to serve you, at least not feeling better.
yeah. The news is
Um,
polarizing right now.
oh, yeah. I mean, so either way, you're going to get stressed out on something,
Yes,
because they're trying to be polarizing. Yeah. But
definitely.
yeah, I would say those are all great tips and patterns. We all have our personal patterns. Understand your patterns and journal on them and practice them, but don't forget them. I think that when you get out of your patterns, like my dad did, bad things can spiral like thing after thing. He used to cook all the time, stop cooking. It's like when one thing I think drops, it's a sign that there's others that could follow, and if too many drop, then it doesn't leave you in a good spot for being you.
Yeah,
So,
and also, I don't know if this was with your dad, but starting new patterns that are not
mm-hmm.
great patterns, where all of a sudden, somebody's not doing something that they truly loved, but somebody is doing something that they never did before, hanging out with people that maybe are just,
Yep.
not in their normal like circle.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. People, it's who you hang out with.
Yeah.
So be careful.
Yes, totally. All right. Well, Joe, thank you
Awesome.
so much for joining us on Digital Detox Secrets. You've shared a lot and I really appreciate it. And if you think of anything else that you want to add or any of your most popular, best shows that I want to like make note of
Yeah.
from your past interviews, and everybody tune into Hustle and Flowchart because Matt and Joe are great. And that every topic and every guest is just a different story and a different background, and love listening
It's
to you
fun.
guys. Yes.
Thank you so much, Lisa. This has been a great time. I love your show too and your book because literally there's like a nugget in every single one of them. So
Thank you. Thank
love
you.
it.
You guys have tons of books and I think the best thing about Hustle and Flowchart, we've said this before, but not on this show, just the community. And I think that's a very important part of like a digital detox secret is be part of a community that where you are going to thrive in and people are thriving around you.
It's 100%. And we
Yeah.
thrive off the community, like, period. If it
Yeah.
wasn't for that, yeah, we wouldn't be doing this thing anymore.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. I'll talk to you later.
See ya. Bye.
Namaste. Thank you for listening to this episode of Social PR Secrets. If you like what you heard, check out the book on Amazon or follow our blog at socialprsecrets.com. This episode was sponsored by The Buyer Group, a social PR agency striving to keep our balance in the digital world, practicing public relations, social media, and search marketing, while occasionally drinking a glass of wine or two for the best creativity and results. Thank you all for tuning in. If you would like to get a free chapter of Social PR Secrets, go to socialprsecrets.com/free.